So I recently finished Echoes of Wisdom, and after finishing the game, I came back to it and attempted a challenge run. This video is about this challenge run. Except it kinda isn't, but one thing after the other. You see, Echoes of Wisdom is this really unique game, featuring dozens and dozens of interesting and creative echoes that Zelda learns over the course of the game. Dozens of interesting and creative echoes that she can summon at will. Yet all those interesting echoes were not what I was interested in. Instead, I was asking myself a question. I was wondering whether it is possible to beat Echoes of Wisdom with only the very first echo we learn. The table. Is it possible to solve all the challenges the game throws in our way, summoning nothing but a table? So I was very much expecting the answer to this question to be a no, but I was curious to give it a try nonetheless. And thus I booted up Echoes of Wisdom, made a new save file, grabbed my table, and went onto a grand adventure. A grand adventure that I abandoned halfway through. I did not finish the challenge run. I did not finish the run because the game frustrated me to no end. And the thing that frustrated me is not a problem that I have specifically with Echoes of Wisdom, but it is a problem that I have with almost all modern Nintendo games. So this video is about the question of whether it is possible to beat Echoes of Wisdom with nothing but a table. It is, however, also about the question of why I abandoned to figure out the answer to this question halfway through my run. And it is about a much bigger problem that I have with modern Nintendo's design philosophy that I feel isn't brought up enough. So in this video, we'll go on an unusual journey. We'll first retrace my steps through Echoes of Wisdom, equipped with nothing but a table. Halfway through the video, we'll take a sharp turn, abandon this very challenge, and instead discuss why I decided to abandon it, and what all of this has to do with a certain aspect of Nintendo's modern design philosophy that I think is hurting their games. The structure of the video is a bit unusual, but don't worry, I'm about 61% certain that everything will make sense in the end. Awesome, so the table is set, we have quite a meal in front of us. Before we start, just one more thing. Judging by the state of my comment section, I think some of you wonderful people think that I'm dead, which I'm super happy to report that to the best of my knowledge, I'm not. Actually, I've been super duper active on YouTube the last year, just over on the other channel, something that I think a couple of you wonderful people might have missed. So if you're interested in watching more silly, not so little videos after this one, there are over a dozen of hours of perfectly silly videos over on the Ceave Perspective channel, including a deep dive into the 1000-Year Door and Mario Wonder, retrospectives on lots of Zelda games, and an exploration on why the 3D platformer genre fell out of favor. In case you missed the channel, and if this sounds interesting to you, there are links to it in the description. Awesome, so let's learn something about Nintendo's modern design philosophy, starting at the only logical beginning point, by figuring out how far the 4 legs of a table can carry us into Echoes of Wisdom. Gentle ladies, gentlemen, and given the current state of the states, especially all you gentle people in general, are you ready? Well then let's do this. After a short introduction sequence, Echoes of Wisdom begins with Zelda imprisoned in a cell. The door is locked, the gap in the wall unreachable, and our only chance to escape, is with our new best friend, the table. In this room, we learn our first and only echo. So what can we do with a table? One might ask. Well, first, we can jump on top of it. Second, well, that's pretty much it so far. All that we can do for now is to hop onto the table and to hop off it again. Luckily for us, it is possible to escape the prison without learning any of the other useless echoes, because the table gives us just enough height to make all the jumps, which is great. You see, the thing that actually had me worried the most was if it is possible to even make it through the very beginning of the game until we learn the linking ability. The ability to link Zelda to echoes is something that we can use since linking is obviously not an echo, and it is something that should come in really handy because it allows us to manipulate our tables to our likings and use objects and enemies in our environment. But until we learn this very vital skill, there is literally nothing we can do but to trust our wooden companion to somehow deal with the problems ahead. Which brings us to the very first problem ahead, the terrible Great Wall. You see, after escaping the prison, we head through a well, and in this area, the game wants us to learn the rock echo. The rock is heavy. The game now wants us to drop one of those heavy rocks onto one of those crates, because the heavy weight of the heavy rock heavily pushes the crate down, opening an exit. Which brings us to the little problem in front of us. Our table ain't as heavy as a rock. We just can't summon enough weight for the dumb crate to sink down. We didn't even leave the tutorial area and are already hard stuck is what I would say if it wasn't for a small but really useful table trick that we haven't talked about yet. You see, when people think about the tables in their lives, they usually think about them like a good friend whom they enjoy to sit down with. Maybe they think about their table as a platform that they can joyfully stand upon. What most people do not consider, however, when they think about their favorite tables, is how dangerous a table actually is. You see, a table is not just a peaceful, inanimate object of quietude. Given the right circumstances, a table can be transformed into a deadly weapon. And what are those circumstances, I hear you ask? Well, dropping a table onto something from far above, of course. Because a falling table ouches extraordinarily when landing, and the tables of Echoes of Wisdom are no different. You see, if we first build ourselves a platform that is 1 block high and then jump, then the table causes damage when it lands. Quick break here. It is important that we are more than 1 block above the object we desire to attack with a table. If we wouldn't jump here, the table attack would fail and the table would uselessly land on all of its 4 legs. Just pointing this out because it will cause us a lot of headache soon. Whoosh, there goes the crate, and our first roadblock is shattered. Up to the beach. The beach is the area where we usually would learn our very first combat echo, which immediately confronts us with our next problem. We do not have the Sword Fighter form unlocked yet. The Sword Fighter form allows us to transform our princess into an image of Link and to fight with a sword while transformed. Something we can't do yet. As a matter of fact, we can't attack anything. We only serve in tables. But as we just established, sometimes it is not the swing of the sword that hurts the most. Sometimes it is the falling table. Tables do not only destroy nasty crates when they drop on them. As it turns out, we can defeat enemies by table attacking them as well. Which is really good news, because we have to defeat a bunch of the green slime enemies in this cave for the exit to open up. Once the tables have dropped and the enemies have died, the path forward is open. And would you believe it? We actually made it to the part where we learn the linking ability. The ability to link our brave princess to objects in her environment is incredibly useful if we want to make it through the game with only a table. First, it allows us to carry random game elements from one place to another, which single-handedly allows us to solve most problems that the overworld could ever throw into our path. But second, and even more important, it allows us to build table staircases. You see, most people that played the game probably realized that it is possible to reposition echoes on echoes in such a way that we can build a staircase. What a lot of people probably missed, however, is how far apart the items can actually be stacked on top of each other. It is actually possible to put tables onto the very edge of tables to create incredibly long, reaching table bridges. Those bridges allow us to solve pretty much every horizontal navigation problem in the game. So gentle ladies, gentlemen, and gentle people in general, with this we actually have a decent tool set. For the first time since we left the prison cell, we actually have a diverse set of tools to deal with the problems. Sadly, however, those tools aren't capable of solving our next problem. You see, we're now in the tutorial dungeon, and in the middle of the tutorial dungeon, we run into this room. Here the game wants us to light up 2 torches. Which is a problem for us because we do not do fire. We obviously skip the torch echo. Luckily for us, our savior, the table, has one final trick up its legs. It's made of wood. Wood burns. If we move the table over a flame, it ignites. If we now grab the table again, then we actually carry a candle. And this table-made candle can ignite the torches. Hooray! Gentle ladies, gentlemen, and gentle people in general, with this we already reached the end of the introduction dungeon. There is just one more challenge ahead of us, the boss fight against Echo Link. If we somehow defeat him, we learn the Sword Fighter ability. This little guy is the final obstacle between us and a combat ability that is slightly more flexible than dropping tables on things. If we somehow manage to beat Link here, it single-handedly solves almost all our combat problems. But to get this incredibly powerful ability, we first have to prove that we are worthy of it. We have to defeat Link with only a table. So the good news is that there are some elevations in the boss room that make it possible to table attack Link. The bad news is that Link is a full block in size. So we just established earlier that the table only deals damage if we drop it onto something from more than a full block above. Since Link is a block in height, we can only damage him if we build a 2 table high structure on on one of the elevated areas and then jump off of this structure while Link is on the lower layer and while precisely dropping the table onto Link's head. Something that is surprisingly difficult for a couple of reasons. So first, Link is really fast. He follows us through the room quickly, permanently attacking us. He's so fast that it is really difficult to manipulate his AI to be at the right spot at the right time so that we can attack him. Second, well, the annoying little guy does not only damage us with his attacks, he also tears down our beautiful table constructs, which means we have to rebuild the platform from which we jump onto him over and over again. And third and finally, well, you see, as much as I love the incredible versatility of a table, even I have to admit that table attacking deals very little damage to enemies. We have to drop so many tables on Link's head to defeat him. It is honestly absurd. To make matters even worse, Link always attacks us when we jump towards him while dropping a table, which makes the whole endeavor surprisingly dangerous. Beating Link here with nothing but a table is really difficult, but we're a princess on an important mission. If a swordsman tries to stand between us and our table, then we have to fight, and thus we pull out our table and drop it. At first, I wasn't even able to hit Link. When I finally hit him for the first time, I was enthusiastic, only to realize that I had not dropped the table from high enough. Instead of hurting Link, I had just equipped him with a new stylish table head. Then I managed to hit him for the very first time, only to die shortly after. But little by little, and table by table, I fought back. And to be honest with you, Link was kicking my bottom here. He destroyed my table structures, he slashed me with his sword, he glitched out instead of taking damage, he dodged, he jumped, he ran and he pushed back against my desperate attempts to drop furniture onto him. And all the while, I could see in his eyes that he was asking himself a question. Why does the guy only use tables? But at this point, giving up was off the table. Would it be possible to beat the game with only the table echo? Probably not, but that is no longer the priority. Link just made this personal. I may not be able to get the credits to roll with nothing but a table, but I certainly won't be stopped by a little boy thinking he's a hero. Who does he think he is? He doesn't even have a fairy. He's certainly not going to prevent me from tabling myself through the game. And little by little, the tables slowly turned. Table by table, I was able to whittle him down. I was dropping tables onto him from the left and the right, over and over and over again. Really, it takes so many tables to defeat him, but after fighting for over an hour, I finally emerged victorious. Is what I thought, but as it turns out, it was just the first phase. There's actually a second one. Turns out we only made it to the halfway point. We have to do it all again, but this time Link moves faster. It took me almost another hour until I finally dropped the final table onto Link's stupid grin. Who is laughing now? And with this, we learned the sword fighter ability. We actually managed to beat the entire tutorial dungeon, learning only the table echo. Hooray! Sadly, this is where this run comes to an end. The game now opens up. We can either proceed into the Gerudo Desert or into the Sora area, and both areas require us to learn a second ugly echo. In the Gerudo area, we reach this room early. Here the game wants us to use a mole echo, so that the mole can dig a hole through the sand for us. This room is on the critical path through the Gerudo questline, and there's just no way to remove the sand for us without summoning one of the dumb moles. The Sora quest confronts us with a similar problem. Here we have to grab an energy ball that is locked behind a bombable wall. The wall can only be destroyed by a bombfish. There is a bombfish early in the room, but we can't bring it to this spot because we can only reach it if we use the bombfish earlier. There is sadly nothing we can do here. Our table only run ends here. Alright, so I know what at least one of you wonderful viewers is currently wondering, but what is the minimum amount of echoes that we need to learn to beat the game? And the answer is that a small YouTuber called Switch Summit actually asked himself the exact same question and made a wonderful video about it that I can wholeheartedly recommend. So if you're interested in learning the answer to this question, make sure to check out his video after you've watched this one. And the 15 hours of content on my other channel as well, of course. But there is actually another question that arises from us not being able to proceed with only a table here. The question of what is the fewest amount of non-table summons required to beat the game. You know, it might not be possible to avoid anything that isn't a table entirely, but we can make it through the game, summoning the absolute minimum amount of non-table entities possible. We can play through the game, optimizing our playthrough in such a way that we only summon things that aren't tables if there is absolutely no other way forward. Something that I imagine would be quite a fun optimization challenge. It was something that I actually wanted to take a look into, honestly more for fun than with the goal of making a video about it. But I didn't, and the reason why I didn't do this, even though it is something that interested me, finally brings us to the actual topic of this video. Because the reason why I decided not to mess around further with the game has something to do with Nintendo's current design philosophy. It is a problem that I have with almost all modern Nintendo games. That is the reason why I ultimately decided not to push the challenge any further. A terrible characteristic of Nintendo that actually had soured my experience with Nintendo games before. If someone were to put a bow to my head and were to ask me what my second favorite Echoes of Wisdom item would be, then I would almost certainly say the sign. So why the sign? I hear you sighing. Well, at first glance the sign might look like a bit of an odd choice. We can't link ourselves to the sign, so we can't stack it. It can't be moved, we can't build fancy bridges with it, we can't jump on top of it. Heck, it's not even possible to defeat Link using only a sign. Why is the sign so special? Here's the thing. You see, if we summon the objectively second best Echo of Wisdom Echo right on top of the trees of the Eternal Forest, and if we then read the sign right as we walk into the Voiding Fog, and if we then hit the menu button while we are fading out, and if we then kill Zelda while the glitched menu is open, and if we then hit the load button when the game over screen pops up, and if we then align the reload button with an actual save that we made earlier in the game, and if we then quickly hit up and A while the screen fades to black, well, if we do all of this correctly, then by the magic of the sign, we find ourselves back at the spot where we attempted the glitch before. But we are no Zelda no more. We are now playing as Link. This little wrong warping glitch makes it possible to play the game as Link like we play him at the very beginning of the game. And the game works surprisingly well, glitched out like this. We can explore the world, we can warp around, we can fight enemies, do quests and ride horses. We can even save the glitched game. This glitch truly allows us to swap characters, something quite strange and really unusual. Alright, that's pretty cool and hype, but why do I bring this up? Well, because I never performed the glitch myself. As a matter of fact, the footage of the glitch that we're just looking at is from YouTube videos by the channels Game is Lifer and Alio. So why did I not perform the glitch myself, one might ask? Well, most of you annoyingly smart viewers probably already know where this is headed, but we aren't quite ready to connect the dots yet. Echoes of Wisdom features a surprising amount of different characters. There are the Soras of the river and the sea, there are the Dekos of the woods, there are the Gorons high up in the mountains, there is Impa, there are the Gerudos, there are the advisors to the king, and most importantly, there is the Stamp Guy. The land is just filled to the brim with a cast of different and diverse characters. But no matter how diverse all the characters may appear at first glance, there is one thing that all of them have in common. They all talk way too much. Whenever we reach a new area in the game, we're introduced to the plot of this area and all its inhabitants with a seemingly never-ending flood of chatter. Reading through all this dialogue always interrupts the gameplay, and at least I got tired of it really fast during my first playthrough. But luckily, this is only an issue the first time through, since we can always skip the cutscenes on replays, right? This here is the options menu of Echoes of Wisdom. So why are we looking at the options menu of Echoes of Wisdom? What has the options menu to do with a character swap glitch, the talkative characters in the game, and my abandoned challenge run? And wasn't this video supposed to be about a characteristic of modern Nintendo games? Well, you see, there is something strange going on with Echoes of Wisdom's options menu, something that should allow us to tie all the loose threads together at once. The thing is right in front of us, because there is something really strange going on with the options menu. There is something missing. Do you notice it? Exactly, there is no options option in the options menu. Apart from changing the difficulty, Echoes of Wisdom has not a single option that allows us to customize how we play the game. nothing. There is no way to reprogram buttons. There is no option to enlarge or hide the user interface. There is no way to make the minimap larger or to deactivate it. There is no way to speed up the text speed or to turn the tutorials off. There is no way to calibrate the brightness of the game or to switch between a performance and a graphics mode, something that Echoes of Wisdom could have really benefited from, by the way. There is just nothing we can customize about our playthrough. Simply nothing. Echoes of Wisdom does not give us any options on how we play the game. Instead, Nintendo has a clear vision in mind on how we ought to interact with the game and provides us with absolutely no options to interact with the game differently. And this very thing, the fact that modern Nintendo games do not give us options on how we interact with them, is the very big problem that I have with Nintendo's design philosophy. Because if we stroll away from Nintendo's static vision on how we are meant to play the game, things become very frustrating, very fast. You see, the reason why I brought up that the characters in Echoes talk too much and that this interrupts the gameplay unnecessarily is because those story sections are not skippable in-game. It is not possible to skip the dialogue, but you see, an option to skip a cutscene is an option. It is an option that allows us to choose how we interact with the game. The option to skip cutscenes is as much an option as an option to reprogram the button layout is. Not being able to skip something is once again the game forcing a certain experience onto the players. But what about the character swap glitch? Well, Nintendo patched this glitch within weeks after the game's release. It is no longer possible to perform the glitch in the current version of the game. You see, once Nintendo patched the glitch, there is no way to ever get back to a previous version of the game if we own the game digitally. And if we own a physical copy of the game, things are only marginally better. In that case, we have to factory reset our Switch to be able to play the game again on the version we own. Once a Nintendo game is updated, there is no reasonable option to ever return back to a previous version of the game. And this is once again a lacking option. And it is something Nintendo specific. You know, Steam, for example, allows us to install every build of a game that ever went live on the platform. It's a bit finicky to do, but if we really want to install an old version of a game, it is easily possible. Sony at least allows us to easily roll back to an older version of a game if we own it physically. It is just Nintendo that really goes out of their way to make it almost impossible to play games on an old version. It is once again Nintendo going out of their way to not give us options on how we interact with a game. It is once again Nintendo forcing us to interact with the game in a certain way they envision. And those two things, the missing option to skip cutscenes and the missing option to somehow roll back my game's version, are the reason why I ended up not trying to beat Echoes of Wisdom with the fewest non-table summons possible. So here's the thing, routing a table percent route through Echoes would require me to beat the game at least 2 more times, probably even more. And I don't mind playing through the game a couple more times, testing strategies, routing things, trying different Echo loadouts and dropping thousands of tables. All of that sounds like a great time to me. But I do not want to watch every single cutscene in the game 3 more times again. There is so much dialogue in the game, so much slow and game pace breaking dialogue, that beating the game another 3 times would have meant that I'd be forced to watch unskippable scenes that I have already seen for upwards of 12 hours again. And I just don't want to spend 12 hours of my limited lifetime watching the Soras quarrel it out for the 4th time. Meanwhile, I was super excited to toy around with the wrong warping glitch that allows us to play as Link. Messing around on the Hyrule Overworld map as Link just sounded like a good time to me. More like a feature to embrace than a bug that needed fixing. It just annoyed me that this option was removed from the game. But that's not even the main problem. You see, the wrong warping glitch not only allowed us to play as Link, it also allowed us to wrong warp to many different places in the game, including to the end of the game. A trick that speedrunners are already using. Being able to warp to lots of places we're not supposed to be at would have been incredibly useful for routing the game, using nothing but a table. But there's just no way for me to mess around with this anymore. I own the game digitally and it is on version 1.0.2. The only option left for me to ever play the game on 1.0 is to hunt down a release day copy of the game and to factory reset my Switch, which, you know, that's just no real option. And this is the reason why I ended up not replaying the game with a little self-set challenge, because there is no option for me to play the game on the version that would make the most sense for such a challenge, and because playing the game like this would have forced me to watch hours of unskippable cutscenes and dialogue. Cutscenes that already bored me the first time I saw them. But all of this is just a small personal anecdote. Are those things really problems with Nintendo's games, or am I just salty because I didn't get to tail myself through Echoes of Wisdom? To which the answer is yes. Of course I was salty, but I also do think that those are real issues that need addressing. You see, what I wanted to do was to interact with the game in a way that Nintendo did not intend. They likely never considered that someone wants to replay the game using nothing but tables. And the second, someone wants to interact with a game in a way that Nintendo did not intend. The lack of options becomes a problem. Not having an option to skip a cutscene or to somehow speed up dialogue is no problem for a first playthrough of a game. It is, however, a problem if we want to route a challenge run, or if we want to do a speed run of the game, or if we want to glitch hunt, find glitches in the game, or even if we just want to replay the game soon after beating it for the first time. Not having an option to skip the dialogue is massively hurting replayability. The same is true for there not being any reasonable options to downgrade the game's version. Playing on the most recent version of a game is almost always the best choice for a first playthrough of a game. But what if we are interacting with the game in an unintended way? What if we're speedrunning? Or again doing a challenge run? Or want to push the mechanics of the game to their absolute limit? Or want to check out a couple of glitches in the game because they sound like good times? All of those things are very real ways in which people interact with games. Very real ways that Nintendo tries to shut down. But you know, why? There is just no reason not to let people mess around with the 1.0 version of a single player game they own. It's, you know, a single player game. Who cares? Why control this? Why not give the people the option to play the game like this? Why give absolutely no options at all? Why not allow people to turn off the UI? Why not allow people to reprogram the button layout in a game? Why not allow us to turn off tutorials? Why not allow us to turn off certain graphic effects? Why not give people the option to skip cutscenes? Why not give people the option to turn down the volume of the background music? Why not allow us to choose on which version we want to play the game? Why try to control the way people interact with a game? Why is Nintendo so obsessed with controlling how we interact with their games? And I really do not know it. It just makes absolutely no sense to me. The year is 2024. It is industry standard to provide options on how we interact with games. Most modern games embrace options. They add extra difficulty options, they add extra speedrunning options, extra options on how to set the button layout, sound options, display options, filters that we can turn on and off. Some games even give us options to turn off entire gameplay elements. All of those options are potentially incredibly valuable for anyone that wants to customize how to play the game. But finally, and most important of all, well, finally, a while ago, I injured my right thumb. So, I'd love to tell a heroic tale of how I injured myself while saving a kitten out of a burning tramway or by barely coming out ahead in a bar fight against a raccoon. But sadly, the truth is a much more mundane one. I was carrying trash bags full with clothes that didn't fit me anymore to one of those drop-off points where they get recycled and didn't notice that the weight was badly overstraining my thumb. And thus I ended up overstraining the muscles in my right thumb pretty badly. So that's no serious injury and something that heals fine on its own. It is, however, an incredibly annoying way to hurt oneself, because if there is one part of your body that you use all the time, then it is your right thumb. It just takes forever to heal because the right thumb is permanently in motion. And that confronted me with quite a problem. You see, I injured myself right around the time I started working on a video about Tears of the Kingdom, and it took several months for the injury to fully heal. So while producing the videos on Tears of the Kingdom, on Hollow Knight, on Majora's Mask, and even on Outer Wilds, I was playing the games with an injured right thumb. And having to play games with an injured thumb really made me realize something. So, as someone who beat Nightmare King Grim with half a useless right thumb, let me tell you, some options in games can become surprisingly handy, surprisingly quickly. You see, the whole video we've been clumsily dancing around the main reason why games usually provide options. And this main reason is accessibility. Adding lots of options to a game just makes a game more accessible to people with disabilities, something we have not discussed so far. And I honestly avoided bringing this up until now for a reason. You see, most of the time when accessibility is brought up, it is discussed as a moral issue. The argument is often that accessibility features should be part of video games, because it is the morally right thing to do, to put in the resources as a developer to make it possible for people with disabilities to play a game. And I do agree with this stance. However, If there's anything the current state of the world seems to tell me about humanity, then it is that appealing to the moral standards of people isn't going to get us anywhere. So allow me to make a different argument, for accessibility for once. You see, you, I, your loved ones, and frankly everyone you ever meet is aging. And I hope for all of us that we all continue to age for many, many wonderful centuries. But aging isn't only fun and fluff. Aging sadly comes with the small hiccup that because of it, the capabilities of our bodies slowly but steadily diminish. Our sight worsens, our hearing degrades, our reflexes become less sharp, our tendons start to ache, our hands may begin to quiver, our muscles may become too weak to do certain repetitive motions over and over again, our memory gets even worse, and so on. And that's just what the aging does. There is also always the unfortunate option that we get hit by a car, fall down some stairs, or that a high altitude mountaineering trip goes terribly wrong, leaves us short a couple of fingers and toes 2 decades from now. Or maybe we just overstrain our thumb while carrying bags full of old clothes. It's easy not to care about a lack of options that make games more accessible for people in need of those features today if we are healthy. But what most people seem to forget is that aging is going to make most of us need certain special ways to interact with games in the future. Things just go wrong as we age, and it sucks, but it is unavoidable. The only way out of this is dying young, something I personally would prefer not to do. But if there are decades of slow but certain physical collapse ahead of us, then I personally would love it if I at least got to play a bunch of really great games while waiting for the inevitable. If we're all stuck here, we might as well have some fun in the waiting room. But if we want to play our favorite games well into old age, well, then these games need to have certain features today, because the most important thing that will decide whether we are still able to play the games of our youth decades from now is the very question of whether those games released with options that allow us to customize the games to whatever needs we may have in the future. Video games are a very young medium. Video games are a medium that is growing up alongside its first consumers. And video games are nowhere near fully grown up yet. Because of this, there is barely any awareness around the question of whether games stay accessible to us as we age. A discussion that we will certainly see more of in the years to come, because aging is something that is inevitable. If we want to be able to continue to play the Nintendo games of our childhood well into old age, then those games need to ship today with features that we do not yet need. But contemporary Nintendo games ship with almost no options on how to play them. And this is something that is already hurting their games in the now. It is hurting replayability. It is hurting everyone who wants to interact with a game in an unintended way. Like speedrunners, challenge runners, glitch hunters, or video creators. It is already making it difficult for people with certain disabilities to enjoy the games today. But worst of all, it will make it difficult for each and every single one of us to continue to enjoy those games as we get older. I have always loved Nintendo games. I have always thought of Nintendo games as timeless games. And at pretty much every point of my life have I enjoyed Nintendo games of every console generation. I would love to continue to enjoy all Nintendo games for the rest of my life. But for this to happen, Nintendo needs to finally change their stance towards providing options on how their games are played. Something that I do hope they soon realize. But worst of all, I am now stuck here and have absolutely no idea on what the fewest amounts of non-table echo summons run would look like, because I can't downgrade my game and because I don't want to handle all the unskippable cutscenes. Certainly the biggest catastrophe of all. Let's try to at least fix this little mess. So at the beginning of the video I mentioned that a small YouTuber called Switch Summit routed the game using the fewest different echoes possible. So let's try something. So Switch Summit, if you can hear this, you seem to be an extraordinarily talented young lad who appears to me to be the right guy for a very important scientific challenge. So I can't speak for all you wonderful people watching, but what I can say with absolute certainty is that at least I would love to watch it if you by chance ended up routing Echoes of Wisdom table % and made a video about it. just putting some ideas out there. Awesome, so here we have it, my attempt to route Echoes of Wisdom using nothing but a table. Why I didn't finish the run, my thoughts on why Nintendo should finally start to include more options on how we play their games, and our weekly reminder that we're all going to die. Hooray! I just feel like there was a tabletop game pun hidden somewhere in the video that I ended up missing, which really annoys me, because I honestly think otherwise I was really atop my table game today. Anyways, as always, a gigantic 4-legged meal-carrying thank you to all my wonderful patrons, whose names are currently scrolling by. YouTube is very restrictive in what kind of content can reach an audience, and videos like this one, but also the silly things we're doing over on the other main channel, would not ever be possible without the generous support of the people whose names are currently scrolling by. A gigantic and huge thank you for this. Second, a shout out and thank you to Psychro, who was the person who actually drew my attention towards the Link character swap glitch, and by this unwillingly set a catastrophe in motion that this video ended up becoming. Third, a kind reminder that there is a lot of perfectly silly Ceave content out there over on the Perspective channel. If you enjoyed this video, chances are you will enjoy those videos as well. Speaking of which, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a thumbs up. If you truly enjoyed it, subscribing might be a good idea, and if you really loved the video and want to make sure that content like this can survive on the platform, then there is also the option to support the channel via Patreon. Until next time, lots of hugs.